So the way that I do the thing is
The thing.
the thing. Yeah, for some reason I have resistance around like saying the word interview or even podcast.
It's just the thing.
It's just the thing.
Okay, I'm
So
down
as
for
we
that.
as we do the thing, I just press the button and then the thing just
That just magically
it
happens.
manifests itself. It's yeah, it's quite. I've been reading too much Joe Dispenza. Are you familiar with him at all?
I'm not.
Oh my God! So You Are the Placebo is the last book that
Ah.
he put out, which is kind of all about how our perception on things actually affects our physiology, affects our neurology, and it's kind of a cool thing. Thanks so much for coming over
Yeah, thanks for having me.
and doing the thing.
Doing the thing.
The thing is happening. So you just got back from Hawaii. What the heck was going on out there?
Um, it was a very last minute trip planned like literally. So Lewis's birthday was Friday, and I had planned a whole like surprise bowling night and like all this stuff, and then he was like, I need to disconnect and get away, we're going to Hawaii. And I was like, okay, never mind, cancel the bowling. And yeah, so we ended up just booking a trip last minute. Had a friend who has a house out there, so that ended up being available, which was perfect. And so we just stayed at his place.
Cool.
And it was like a beautiful, he didn't take his phone or computer. I did because I had enough disconnection in Bali. But I mean, I got to lay on a hammock, watch the sunset as I'm working on my computer. Can't complain about that.
Yeah. When you're traveling,
Mm-hmm.
how does one not destroy themselves in an airplane, for example?
Oh, I think I'm not thinking of anything that would be destroying or, any of those negative terms.
Oh, good point.
Because
Shit.
yeah, exactly. As soon as
Oh.
we say like an airplane's going to destroy us or something is bad, it's going to be bad.
That's Joe Dispenza. You are the placebo.
Exactly.
You are the book.
Oh,
You
I don't even need
you
to
don't
read
need
it.
to read the stupid thing. You're the book.
But yeah, so it's like I go in knowing that if I need to stand up, I'm going to stand up, and I'm not going to feel bad about it for the people next to me. Sorry, but I'm going to get out of the aisle when I need to. And I'm going to stretch. Maybe I put something behind my back. Maybe I sit into it. I don't worry about it too much. I think people worry about it way too much, and then they're like, well, I have to have my little lumbar thing and I have to have this, and all of a sudden you're in increased tone all throughout your body because of how you're supposed to be, right? And it automatically you're like getting off stiffer because now you were like trying to tense up and sit a perfect
Yeah, you're right.
way and do all these things where there's not one way to be, there's not one perfect posture. There's more efficient things, certainly, but it's just when we start hammering in to our minds too much as to how things are supposed to be or have to be, that's what's going to create more of the pain.
That's really good. Yeah.
Thank you.
We should just finish this thing
All
right
right,
there.
done. Perfect.
That was legit. That goes against everything I've ever said, but that's legit. Yeah, that's really good. So that's it's like depression. A big part of depression is inflammation around the brain, and inflammation ends up manifesting as a product of stress. And stress is like this big umbrella word for freaking anything that wigs you out.
Everything. Yeah.
So we have like orthorexia, or become obsessed
Yes.
with being healthy to the
Yes.
point that you're kind of this weirdo alone in the
Right.
closet eating spirulina flakes.
Ew.
You know?
No.
I'm talking about myself. Have some empathy. For God's sake.
I'm sorry.
So are there any tactics, tips, tools, or anything like that you are paying attention to, or you're really just not giving a shoot as you're
Well,
on the
you
plane?
know why I think I can do that though is because I care so much outside of an airplane.
Yeah, right.
So I'm constantly into tuning in into what my body needs, into do I need more strength, more mobility, more flexibility, more whatever it may be. I'm in a constant motion, right? So I'm not allowing my body to sink into a moment where it's going to be too stiff. So then when I go onto an airplane, I have the ability to sit and slump because my spine is used to going in flexion. I have the ability to sit and have lumbar support and be in more extension. I have the ability to lift my knees up or to extend my legs or to get out of the chair and stand up and move around and stretch a little bit because I don't really care what anyone thinks about me. So because I take care of myself outside of an airplane, I think I can go into an airplane and sit comfortably.
I've been cultivating thousands of neurotic weirdos from this podcast, I think. I think you were exactly what we needed. So that's an interesting thing is we do become fairly in like the self-care, mobilization, orthopedic world. I think we become obsessive with creating more, just as a one example would be like creating more thoracic spine extension, because everyone's
Totally.
stuck in this folded forward position.
Totally.
And so then we can become kind of pathological with our obsession with that one position, when the reality is just culturally we're stuck hunched over.
Yeah.
But if you can somehow figure out a way to start to be balanced both, but so for people that, like, how do people start that conversation with themselves of actually creating balance?
I mean, you got to start moving into positions that don't feel comfortable. So it's like you're saying, for most people who are stuck forward, well, how often are you going out? And how often are you laying over something that opens up your chest, opens up your shoulders? I mean, I think we forget, especially like the biggest one is like upper traps and neck, like upper traps and neck tension all the time. Yeah. And like you're saying, being stuck here, people are like, well, I just need this rubbed out and just just get in some foam rollers, attack that thing with, the guns that are going to like
I like the guns.
They feel good. No,
really
don't
nice.
get me wrong. They feel good. But it's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
If we're stuck forward and we're stuck here, we have to look, well, what's being tighter and restricted. And let's not think of the things that are being lengthened and working hard. I mean, yeah, they're working hard and rubbing it out is going to feel good for the moment. Yeah. But it's going to go right back to feeling crappy. So opening up in the chest, getting these moments of really overextending almost, I would say. So it's like when you're sitting at a desk working forward, I want people to get out of their desk, go over to a wall and be that person that's like stretching on the wall. Yeah. I mean, maybe the boss would be like, maybe don't touch your hands on the wall. Right. So maybe you could figure out some other things, but really getting yourself from this position to the opposite position, because that's where we start to find balance. It's not just so another good way to think about it is just pulling the shoulder blades down and back and just working the muscles here. But if we're forgetting the front, then we're never going to be able to make that actually an effective habit. But actually taking your body and now how much flexion can I go into? How much extension can I go into? And teaching the body to have this extreme balance from one point to the next point, and then be able to find the body on its own, be able to find that mid balance where it's just at rest. That's the goal.
So a lot of people end up having kind of these like rusty, decrepit steel pipes for thoracic territories. That was a little bit rash. That was a bit much.
Jeez,
but there's
you're like really gonna
I'm
drive
harsh.
up the
I'm harsh. We need to balance. It's yin yang. You're too damn sweet. I need to like come in. And so we have this. We end up being really stiff through this portion of the spine, right? So the thoracic, middle. We're on video, folks. So if you're tuning in via the audio, check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll see me doing this to my spine. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, but this. So through our thoracic spine, people are stiff. Yeah. And so the tendency is people end up oftentimes saying, cool, sweet, I'm going to go into extension, start opening up my chest. And then immediately they just end up going into hyperlordosis or just blowing their lower back out.
Yeah. 100%.
So now we end up having this whole new sequel of issues because now you're putting all this lower back pelvic disorder type stress in there. So can we talk about how to kind of be aware of upstream, downstream type stuff?
Yeah. That's hard. I mean, it's hard when you're not someone who's used to tuning in to your body, who's used to knowing, well, what is it? Like I've had clients who don't even know what muscle soreness is supposed to feel like. Like I've had a patient where it's like, we worked one day pretty hard, and the next day she was like, I almost went to the hospital because I didn't know what this was supposed to feel like. I was like, whoa, a little extreme.
That's interesting too.
So some people, it's going to take time to start to understand what your body, what is pain, what is soreness, what is, it's just some little basic aches and pains that we might feel throughout the day. Maybe it's stress. Being able to determine whether something is actually injured or whether something's actually just a little more sensitive right now, and that's going to back off. Also, understanding, am I opening through my thoracic spine, my upper back, or am I opening through my low back? A lot of people don't know what the difference is. I'm opening, right? Like you're saying.
Yeah.
And so it is hard, I would say, if you're not someone who's used to being active, being an athlete, understanding your body, it's going to be a little tough. So that's when I suggest you have people like us in the world who know the body, who help people, who, you know, there's so many amazing people out there who want to learn, who are doing more and are educators, personal trainers, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists, like the list goes on of as to people who can help you. So going and getting facilitated by someone else is an amazing thing to do. No one's going to fix you. So I like to keep that in the mindset. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm not going to fix you. And I make sure all my clients know that. I'm here to facilitate what you might not see is happening, just like I might go to someone else because I don't know I can't always see what's happening. I can feel as much as I can feel, and we can prevent a lot just by tuning in. But it's great to be able to go to someone else and be able to get that facilitation so they can say, you know what, I love and appreciate that you're opening up into your upper back, but you might be hyperextending and actually just tucking or sticking that pelvis out and dropping into that low back, and that's going to cause some other issues. So here's how I want you to do it instead. Here's a better way, tucking that tailbone under and now slowly just opening. You might just go to a straight position.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be extended at all, and you might think, oh, that's strange. But really starting to understand that based on working with someone who can facilitate and can help that movement is going to be key for anything. You know, it's like everything is moving to technology, which is an amazing thing, but we also can't forget about the people.
Right.
Because there's so many amazing people who can still help you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need surgery and doctors, which are great. Don't want to like knock anyone down here, but it's like people who are really in tune with the musculoskeletal system, the neurological system, chiropractors and PTs usually mostly, they can probably assess and facilitate a lot better.
Yeah. You said musculo like a European person.
Oh.
That was fancy.
Oh, you know, in Canada we learned that they say skeletal.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's. I don't know if musculo is European, but I know the skeletal.
Skeletal.
Yeah, that's the one.
We were like, what? Skeletal?
Yeah, I like that. What about headstands? That's something I see people doing terribly. How many people are ready to do a headstand? Because it seems like a fairly like novice-ish position that most people's like, yeah, I want to get my headstand in. But the reality of it, again, is you're making a pretty complex equation for your body.
Yeah. I would say you have to, first of all, be comfortable going upside down. So can you even go into a forward fold and have that pressure, that blood pressure? Can you be comfortable with your head upside down? Because some people can't. And so it's trying to like force yourself into a position that you don't feel, your body doesn't feel comfortable with. You're going to get upside down and then just like not only not be able to orient yourself, but your neurological system is not going to feel safe,
Right.
you know? So I would say just being able to like forward fold, even if that means like your legs are spread apart, doesn't have to be perfect, whatever you can to just start to get your body used to going upside down. And then I would say that a lot of people need neck strengthening and control before they're able to just throw themselves into a headstand, because a lot of it happens where you suddenly get the loss of balance through the cervical spine, because now that's the thing that's first in contact with the floor, and your body doesn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people are stuck in forward head posture, which they get this crunch around the back of the neck, the suboccipital area, if you want to be fancy. And so we get crunched back in that territory, and then they're going into a headstand, and they're exacerbating all those same patterns. You know, so figuring out, it's just, I'm just using that essentially kind of like as an analogy or a metaphor of like, that relates through everything. If you can get into that alignment, then all of a sudden your movement starts working for you. For most of us, you know, myself included, I have all sorts of positions and I'm like, ooh, that just makes things worse. You know, most of us, our movement practice, we invest so much time and energy into our workout or our yoga or what have you. And then it's still 10, 15, 20 years later, you still have the same aches and pains. So figuring out, man, I've worked so hard. I've stood on my head for 10 minutes a day, and all I have is a cervical disc herniation from it. So figuring out, like, how do we kind of, it's an interesting dance, finding that point of alignment where your movement starts to work for you.
Yeah. But I think it's also something that we can't force. Like, I disagree with when you go to a clinician and they do x-rays on you, which typically happens in chiropractic offices. They'll do an x-ray and they say, and it's usually standing, so it's posturally based. They say, you have forward head posture. This is what happens when forward head posture starts to go forward even more. You're going to have all these disc problems, and it's fear, 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 fear. And then you start just looking, okay, well, I have to do this chin tuck and I have to lay over this thing so that I increase the cervical spine and blah, 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 blah. And yet you didn't look at the whole rest of the body.
Yeah.
Well, how are they standing? Maybe because they're an anterior pelvic tilt, thoracic, like stiffness or flexion, and then their head is coming forward just to balance what they're doing so they don't fall backwards. Maybe that's what caused the forward head posture to look like it is in the x-ray, but that's not necessarily how their spine is.
Yeah.
So if we're only looking at one piece of the puzzle, we're missing the whole picture. We're missing the whole person. If we're not even talking to what's going on in their lives or what they're eating or all the other things, right? We're missing the whole picture. So just saying, that's why I kind of have gotten away from like forward head posture, because it really goes into, well, how are you even standing on your feet?
Sure.
And if you don't have the neurological balance just within your feet, your legs are probably going to be maybe more internally rotated, maybe a little bit more anterior pelvic tilt, maybe you're breathing up from your chest, and then all these muscles are working harder, forcing that neck forward. There's so many other factors that go into play than just looking at one thing.
Yeah.
So could they possibly go on their head and not have forward head posture? 100%, because now you change the system. So, but then maybe they stand and they have forward head posture.
Right.
So, I mean, all I'm saying is that we can't look at one area.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Right? And I like to play devil's advocate.
Oh, I don't even think you're disagreeing with me. I mean, I hear everything you're saying. Okay. And when I'm saying forward head posture, I'm just saying in that position, you happen to be crunching your neck.
Yeah. If you're like,
it's not to say like, oh, you have a tendency of being like that, so now you just, that's off the board for you. It's just like, I see you doing it. You're in that position.
While you're doing
you're not creating that. I'm becoming like an evangelical alignment minister. You're like really balancing me out. It's really helpful.
Well, I especially for listeners, it's like, I've even heard, I mean, I hear everything because people DM me about all these different things, and I've heard, I have scoliosis, so my chiropractor told me not to load my spine. And I was like, cool, then you better not stand up.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we load the spine in standing. You better not pick up anything off the floor or lift anything. I mean, you better not be functional in your life. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
So how do we start to speak into the feet for alignment in relation to the head? And how do we start to let go of some of that fear-based movement throughout the world and just embrace, enjoying our bodies as we grow and as we build and as we find alignment?
And that's the thing. It's like, especially for capable, able-moving bodies who weren't born with disease and weren't born with these what we would call limitations, whether you have like arthritis, junior rheumatoid arthritis, where you're literally born with just your joints are not going to move very well, or like cerebral palsy or Down syndrome or something else. When you're born with this capable, amazing body, just like you said, we have the ability to adapt and learn and grow. And that's what I think people need to tap back into as well and really appreciate about their bodies is like, you might feel stuck right now, but don't you understand how you were a baby and you were rolling around and you were laughing and happy and squatting and standing and doing all these things? Like, you have the ability to get back to it. It's just going to take time.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And
that's really good.
The main thing is really just exploring movement. and not getting stuck in only what feels good. And I know sometimes that's really hard because we have busy lives and we have a lot happening and a lot going on. But that could mean as simple as like, I'm a shorter person. So if I'm going to speak for myself, but if I'm going to like, I'm brushing my teeth and I'm going to spit and I'm going onto my tiptoes, I'm noticing, am I falling and my ankles out? Am I coming in? How am I standing on my toes? Can I feel all my toes?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of noticing things like this. So say you're in the kitchen, you're reaching for something. Can you notice where you're going onto your feet? Can you feel all pressures of your feet, or are you falling into your ankles on the outside? So simple things like this. When you're cleaning your kids' play area, can you get down on the floor? Can you crawl around while you're doing it? Or does one way feel more comfortable? Does the other way feel less comfortable? Can you move into that less comfortable way a little bit more? If you're sitting and one leg is always crossed over, can you switch legs and sit the other way? So just starting to take this appreciation and this notice of our bodies in these little simple tasks that we do all throughout the day, and saying, can I start to switch things? Because that's where your body's going to start to find balance. And then, and I would say even just standing. So standing, if you don't have shoes on and you're standing for a moment, or even if you have shoes on, can you feel where the pressure is? Does it feel like it's more in the toes, more in the heels, more on the outsides? Or be that person who's like standing in line at the grocery store who's kind of like rocking back and forth, waiting to feel where the balance is.
Yeah.
Are you always standing on your right side? That's a really common one. Or can you shift over to the other side? Or can you even shift and stand balanced? Another big one to notice is if you stand with your feet further apart from each other, your body, that's a good sign to tell you that your body doesn't feel safe. When it has to increase the base of support, it's now like your neurological system is like, whoa, we don't feel comfortable.
Like you do if there was all of a sudden an earthquake or somebody push you.
Then you get into a larger base of support. And you see this a lot with like people who have a lot of hyperextension in their knees and anterior pelvic tilt and kind of like this resting posture. Their legs are typically further apart because their body is in this state of like, well, everything is a little off right now. Yeah. So here's how we feel balanced.
I was I just did a video series that I include with the band thing I was telling you about called Form for Life. It's just a little compilation that gets into exactly that. So figuring out as we're sitting at the computer, you're kind of going against what I'm saying. Well, you're with it, but you're kind of adding life to it. I'm a little bit more lifeless, I think. But it's as you're sitting, you're doing yoga, you're exercising. So it's like a sukhasana, or then you do a malasana, and then a tadasana. It's like all these positions, all the asanas, they're just being in your body on a momentary basis, on a day-to-day basis. Every situation that you're in, you have an opportunity to do some freaking yoga. Yeah. And if you can start to implement that into becoming like, oh, it just makes more logical sense for me to do these positions in a more effective way because I'm stronger, more vital, like my body starts to become better because I move better. As opposed to it being this thing where I drive out to this yoga studio and I'm sitting in this terrible position. Sorry for using the word terrible. And all this stuff. And then I go and I do my yoga and then I kind of throw it out the window. And then I spill my tea all over my couch. Video. Tune in. Tea on couch. But what about floor sitting? What's your thoughts on that versus
I think it's great. I think we should 100%. I think we should be mixing up everything. If you and I we took this onto the floor, it'd be the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
We're not sitting like you would sit in a couch, you know? And I think that's the perfect thing for people to remember is that most of our situations where we're sitting, we're in 90 degrees hip flexion, 90 degrees knee flexion, and your feet are even less, they're just like resting. So how do we expect to then go out and do a workout like you're saying and actually be able to move? Like if we're not putting our joints into other positions, then...
Move the thing up a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
I interrupt the whole flow.
I know.
Idiot.
But if we're not putting our joints into these other positions, especially for an extended period of time, Like, expect to get some injury in lifting. I'm sorry, but like your ankles don't move well, your hips don't move well. We have to be thinking, and this is going to be hard, you know, for people to hear who have desk jobs and they're like, well, what do you want me to do all day long?
Yeah, it's a big question.
I would say, you know, I think it's really adamant that take off your shoes. If you wear heels, take off your shoes every once in a while. And you know, it's hard because if you do have to dress really nice to work, that is hard to say, well, get into a full squat.
Yeah.
Well, if you're wearing a pencil skirt, that's probably not going to happen, or you're going to rip something. Um, so, you know, it's hard. And I think you just have to do your best. Maybe you're standing a little bit more. Maybe you're at least, you know, bending your knee as much as you can and stretching into your quad while you're standing and you're waiting for the printer or something. You know, it's just finding these moments at least where you can just take your body into a different position.
I think it's just understanding the cost benefit analysis of the situation. So it's like, okay, I'm doing the pencil skirt, I'm doing the heels, this makes me hot, I'm going to get this job thing, I'm going to, you know, all that. It's like, cool.
Yeah.
As long as you're conscious and educated on what you're doing, I'm completely fine with it. It's for the people that we have passed judgment on, folks that have like big plates in their lips and, you know, the rings around their necks in Southeast Asia. And it's like, oh, that's crazy that they do that. But meanwhile, you're stuffing your feet into these little high heels.
Yeah.
They're literally doing the exact same thing. It's just down your toes.
Yeah.
Like we're foot binding, you know, so as long as, but I think that's cool. Like I have a lot of respect for cultures that do that. We just need to realize that we're a culture that does that.
Yeah.
You know,
True.
and so from there it's figuring, okay, great. So like you had mentioned with being on the plane, it's like I mobilize myself enough through all these other ranges and I have a positive attitude as I go into the pencil skirt or the heels that I can kind of buffer that. You know, but if that's your whole world, then you go home and you sit and you watch TV, like that's when it becomes a real issue, is you don't expand
Outside of your environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any, so for the person that is in the office, what do we do? Because that's a big thing. A high percentage of people listening to this, I'm sure, like are in that category of like, dude, I'll probably get fired. I'm kind of like, maybe you should find another job, but but like, how do we work within that space? Is there any kind of tips?
Yeah, I mean, I'm posting things on social media where I'm always showing like, here's what you can do for your neck while you're sitting at your desk. Here's what you can do for your thoracic spine while you're sitting at your desk. Here's how you can stretch and open up your hamstrings, your hip flexors, getting up and using your chair, you know, as a handle as you're getting into these different stretches. There's so much that you can do, even though maybe you're wearing an outfit where you can't drop into a deep squat. But maybe sometimes during the week you say, okay, for today I'm not going to wear the pencil skirt. I'm going to wear nice slack pants that I can still move in, so I can go into the back room and I can take a deep squat and breathe while I'm like looking at my phone, or while I'm waiting for the printer to print whatever, or just taking the opportunity to be able to move out of the positions. It's all that I can suggest. It's like, notice the position that you're in. Now, how can we reverse that? How can we take that into the complete opposite? And I think we can't be afraid to go into the complete opposite, because it's also like thinking of your foot pronated or supinated. Usually it's not like so supinated you're walking on the outside of your feet, right?
What does that mean?
Pronated, supinated. So when you're on your feet, pronation is typically where your arches fall down, you know? So people who have flat feet.
5 times.
No, I can't do
Say
it.
it 5 times.
Supination is usually where people have high arches. So that's typically the language that we get for pronation, supination. But now if you're one or the other, that's fine. But the goal is that our bodies live on this spectrum. So I want you to think of this spectrum of your body. Okay, you're going to be more toward pronation or more toward supination, but you're not going to be fully one. So what if you started, instead of just saying, oh, you have flat feet, just train your arches and pull those suckers up. But what if you started to actually balance out the body? So you pushed a little bit more into full pronation and then taught it what full supination was, and moved back and forth between the two. And then your body on its own, again, everything on its own, starts to find balance. because when we're constantly forcing these positions that are just not natural, it's probably not going to last. It might help for a little bit, but it's probably not going to be the answer to like pull your body back. So that's why I say, you know, if you're standing more on your right, go back and forth and stand fully on your left and see what it feels like to kind of shift back and forth. If you are fully forward, see what it feels like to come fully back, or even more forward, push the boundaries. So kind of allow your body to feel that back and forth, that play. And then that is what's going to teach that neurological system. I feel full this side. Now I feel full this side. Now this is where middle lies, without having to tense and tone and do all these crazy things, but just allowing your body to get there on its own.
Yeah. We do the same thing. So the same thing that I had referenced in relation to like the thoracic spine area, where we become obsessed with like, gotta bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. We do the same thing with the supination and pronation of the foot. You know, so everybody thinks they're duck-footed, and everybody's got the pronated, you know, the medial, the inside of the foot's just dropping in.
Right.
It's terrible. It's smearing against the ground. Oh.
There you go again. You're so
I
good
know,
with
it's
those.
terrible. You know, and so then we end up being really obsessed with like, okay, grab the towel and like get the external rotation.
Exactly.
And now you end up, go from, okay, you were kind of imbalanced. And now, but now instead of actually addressing that, you just added a new imbalance on top of that.
Yeah.
Now, as opposed to actually kind of being a little more softer, which seems like what you're getting after, you know, and being just speaking into the thing, you're just kind of adding this new layer on top of it.
And a deep sigh.
What about breath?
I love breath.
What do we need to know about that thing?
I mean, we're all breathing. If you're listening to this, you're alive. You're breathing.
Oh,
so again,
we have a big audience in the dead community.
Oh, do you? God, I forgot about them.
One of
I'm
the
sorry.
main-
I don't mean to be exclusive
it's one
here.
of the main demographics.
So again, it goes back to what's more efficient and what's more effective for the body. Breath literally can affect your gut health, which I thought that was like amazing when I learned that. So it doesn't really, like, if you're eating so well, but then you're breathing really ineffectively, it's going to affect your internal gut health, and you can still have autoimmune disease. You can still have all these other things, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
So really, when it comes to breath, I think it's learning the balance again. I think I saw a big shift into belly breathing, which was awesome. But then I also had clients literally coming into me like, I've been working so much on my belly breathing, and they're forcing their bellies out and in. I was like, what's happening?
It's the same as the feet and the spine.
Yeah. And I was like, the whole point of what belly breath was trying to get after was this low rib cage movement, so that you can start to expand from a little bit lower and get which you're right underneath the lower rib cage is where your diaphragm rests. So being able to expand fully from that diaphragm and allow it to drop and lift and do things that it's supposed to do, we wanted to get that low rib cage movement. So people started to say belly breathing. And I used it as well until I started to see the effects that it was having. And what happened there is that people started forcing out the belly to breathe, but the rib cage wasn't doing anything.
Right.
And again, still breathing, still fine, just not effective, not as efficient within the body. The reason why we want to get that diaphragm to really be able to be expansive and move in the rib cage, which now means a 360 movement. So it means I'm going to breathe and my rib cage is going to expand out, it's going to expand to the sides, and it's going to expand to the back. So it's this whole 360 thing. It's still going to lift a little bit, but the point is that if you put your hand on your chest, this isn't the only thing that you feel moving up and down, you know? Like, it's going to move a little bit, but it shouldn't be the guiding point of your breath. So if you can put your hand like lower on like that rib cage area, kind of where your rib cage comes together, and feel the expansion in your hand going out to the sides, going up and forward, and kind of getting that to start to open up a little bit better.
Should we do two hands? Not we right now per se, but would that be of
I
benefit
do.
to go
I
like?
definitely do. So I usually do 2 hands on the low rib cage so that you can feel that. I also do child's pose, and I say, can you feel it going into your back and your back rising? I do laying on your side, put 1 hand on your side. Can you feel it going into your side? So it's like there's a 360 dimension of breath that we want to create, because when we're able to do that, we're able to actually get more oxygen out to your body the way that it's supposed to be, even up to the brain. So now we're thinking better. We have, clearer thoughts, and just running our whole body systematically a lot better. And I would say the more that you can start to learn to breathe in and out through your nose is actually more beneficial as well. Even when you're working out, sometimes it's actually a lot. I mean, obviously you don't have to do it all the time, but when we breathe out, in and out through your nose, you're not expelling as much carbon dioxide. And the reason why we want to keep a little bit more within our bodies, is because carbon dioxide is actually going to grab onto what's called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is going to release the oxygen. So that's what is releasing the oxygen that gets, dispersed throughout our whole body. That's going to decrease muscle restriction and all this tightness that you feel like you have all throughout the day. It's going to reduce stress because it's going to take down cortisol levels. It's going to take your body from that sympathetic nervous system into that parasympathetic nervous system and get us back into rest and relaxation. So it just plays a whole part in the more effective and efficient we can guide into the breath and breathing, the better that we can help increase mobility, increase flexibility, decrease pain, decrease stress levels, improve our gut health. It just overall has so many benefits for the body.
You read a book called The Oxygen Advantage?
I haven't.
Oh, it's good. It's getting into a lot of the stuff that you're saying right now.
Awesome.
And so one of the big things that he gets into in there, a guy called Patrick McCowan, who I'm sure we'll have on here. I haven't reached out to him yet, but coming soon, I would imagine. He's like a pretty rad fella.
Awesome.
And but one of the things he gets into there is we're over breathing ourselves. So now like Wim Hof is becoming, or has become, really popular, and all these different things. Like, you got to breathe the shit out of yourself. And I think it's the same thing. There's no good or bad. It's just finding balance with all of it. Sometimes it's good to breathe the shit out of yourself.
Yeah.
In general, though, that's slowing down the breath a little bit through the nose. Another fun thing that happens with going through the nose, you end up releasing more nitrous oxide, which ends up being lowering blood pressure and just being generally relaxing for your body, more vascularity, circulation. And we end up being sensitive to having a decrease in carbon dioxide because we're always expelling that carbon dioxide.
Yes.
So slowing that breath down a little bit is something that he gets into.
I love that. Awesome.
Pretty cool. Are there any like exercises or anything that you give clients or patients?
Yeah, I mean, the main things so I kind of touch on them. I usually start with asking everyone to lie on your back for 5 minutes before you go to bed at night. So you can prop some pillows underneath your legs if you need to. 1 hand on your chest, 1 hand on like that lower rib cage part that we were talking about. Or I go over to the double hands on the rib cage.
And we can do that. Maybe that's one of the things we can do.
We could totally do that.
Oh, man.
and then and the other thing that I'm really just trying to do is like calm the hell out of these people. Because a lot of times you say, oh, okay, I want you to meditate for like 5 to 10 minutes. And people who like don't do that at all, you're going to freak the hell out of them. But if you're saying, okay, this is actually like so beneficial for your pain right now, especially as a physical therapist, and for your restrictions that you have going on with your body, if you don't do this, it's not going to improve. I can actually get them to calm down in their bodies at least once a day. And then I start saying, okay, feel what that feels like at night. Now I want you to carry that into when you're driving. Can you feel? Is your breath going into your upper chest? And when you're sitting at your desk at work, can you take a moment? You feel like things are getting really stressed out. Can you put your hand on your chest and your rib cage and say, okay, can I slow down the breath right now? So starting to implement it into the day is what I try to promote. So I do the one laying on your back. I also do the one laying on your side if I feel like they need a little bit more lateral expansion. So just laying on your side, propping pillows underneath your knees again, or between your knees, hand on the lower rib cage, breathing into your hand, and you want to feel an expansion out to the side and up since you're laying on your side. And then I do child's pose as well, and you should be able to feel like your belly pressing into your legs and kind of that lower back area starting to rise. So I do probably be about like 2 minutes in each position is what I suggest
Cool.
to at least start with, to start to like you're saying, slow down the breath, breathe in and out through your nose. And hopefully, especially if you do that right before bed and you're starting to get used to breathing in and out through your nose, you'll take that into sleep, because it can be hugely beneficial for sleep, especially to prevent anything like sleep apnea and all these other things, snoring. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Didgeridoo is helpful for that too. No big deal. Playing a wind instrument, practicing creating that compression. We got
100%.
sloppy, flaccid upper glottis muscles, and they end up just wiggling around and creating little. It's too graphic. All right, so we should do a couple video things in relation to. So we're talking about all this stuff, about stuff you can do with breath and all that. So we're gonna do a couple videos here. Maybe. How do people find you, just in case it makes more sense to kind of just like cut the podcast in case words end up wandering off, which mine do all the time anyway, so that'll probably be okay. But how do people learn more about, you have the mobility method and
yes.
you have, like, how do people learn more about you?
Yes.
Your Instagram's phenomenal, all the stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Instagram is mainly where I'm at right now, which is DocGenFit, but I will be on YouTube as well, DocGenFit. And my programs you can find through my website is docgenfit.com. So I have the mobility method, which it really allows you to do a whole self-screening and then find the restrictions, find the areas where you're most restricted in your body. And then it kind of guides you into some exercises you can do to specifically start to address those areas. And what I suggest with the program, because it's really just a whole toolbox at your fingertips of like all these things from your neck all the way down to your toes that you can do for your body. And so what I suggest is taking just a few of them and starting to see, can I implement this in the morning? Can I do this when I get home from work? Can I do this right before I go work out? So finding 1 to 2 exercises where you can implement them in throughout the day is so ideal. And then you start to build your own program. No one else is telling you to do it for you. I don't do like a day 1, day 2, day 3, because we're all different individuals. We all are going to have our own unique restrictions. So I just don't believe in that. So that's why I created something where people get to experiment with their own bodies and start to tune in, which is super fun.
Cool.
And then I also have the Optimal Body. So if you want to be a part of our membership, it's 4 functional HIIT workouts, 4 mobility flows, and 4 core stability workouts every month.
Rad.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.